Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends, or for today and for the time being, just one Puerto Rican talking about Star Wars and other nerd related media, but exclusively for the next, what is it, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it is. Acolyte Nation is alive and well. It's not a Star Wars channel, it's an Acolyte channel. But before we get going with our Acolyte celebrations, we have to welcome back to the channel the Diet of the Force for me today, Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me back. I really wish I still had your hat and then I could be an honorary Puerto Rican. Is that how that works?
The it's I think it's kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's more like guidelines, and I feel that depending on how the hat is bestowed is how Puerto Ricanness is granted.
Well, you
So
left it in my hotel room, so I assumed you
that is
wanted me to
true.
have
That
it.
is true. I did not. However, I was not sad about it. I feel like my hat and I needed some time apart, and Atlanta was a place that had never been to, so it was a nice little vacation for the both of us, and I felt like it was well taken care of. It was nice to see it in the background of the video. So I'm like, okay, it's not being abused. It's being given a treatment of honor and respect, and I
It was in
appreciate
good,
that.
safe hands, yeah.
It was, and I appreciated being returned. It misses you though. Every time I wear it, it's just like, come
Well,
on.
bring it down to Dragon Con.
Oh, Dragon Con. Well, tickets are booked. Although I will say that I have not booked. I mean, I have Mush Eisley. I have the room, but I have not booked the actual Dragon Con badge.
Oh, that's fine. They don't
Because
they don't
yeah,
cap attendance, so
exactly. Because at this point, after my one experience at Dragon Con, it was like, do you even need it? It's like there's so much chaos that you can just. I could probably wear a celebration badge from 3 years ago and just walk around comfortably. But let's not let the fine people of Dragon Con know
don't
that
do
that
that.
might be the plan.
Don't do that.
No, they're following me now on Twitter, even though I'm not there anymore. Yeah. But yes, thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you over, especially because I feel now you have been joining us at like milestone moments,
Hmm.
and Acolyte is definitely a milestone. I don't know about you, but for me, this is the show that I've been waiting for most anxiously from the announcement of shows that they did back in the day when they announced Skeleton Crew and Andor. Obviously, Acolyte. Like this is the one that I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's gonna be good. And that was years ago, and now we're here, and the premieres in the past, and it's one of those things where it's just like, what is time? So we're in thriving Acolyte Nation and definitely enjoying it. But before we get going with the episodes per se, the premiere episodes, which we finally know their names, which are awesome names, and we'll
I
get
love
to
the
that.
titles.
Yeah, I thought that was I thought that it's interesting that they never reveal the titles in the premieres or the screeners. You're just gonna have to discover it with everybody. So once I saw it this morning on Disney Plus, I was like, oh shit, like this is good. And it's
Good titles.
thematically relevant to everything that's going on in the show, thematically relevant to all the stuff that Leslie Hetland has done in the past as well, and all the things that she has said about how she writes other things and how she's writing Acolyte. But speaking of Leslie Hetland, you and Molly were very, very lucky to have been able to participate in a roundtable experience with other cool content creators. How was that like? Tell us a little bit about it. I know you guys have like a full breakdown video where you discuss everything, but for people that only watch Triad of the Force and don't watch Star Wars Explained, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Acolyte experience?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it under 40 minutes, but it was great. Like Leslie was awesome to talk to. We didn't really know what to expect beforehand, but they just had like a bunch of chairs and a couch sat in a circle. And so we all sat down and Leslie came in and just basically started talking to us, was incredibly uh Molly and I keep using the word candid, but I mean she was like she wasn't talking to us like it was a staged publicity
Hmm.
thing. Like she was cussing a lot. She was very honest. She was
Relaxed.
relaxed. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just speaking from the heart and not like prepared. Like I don't want to.
She didn't have the talking points that
Yeah,
Disney
yeah,
gave, right?
yeah. They weren't canned responses.
Hmm.
Like she immediately would start talking if you asked her a question, and it was definitely like this is how she feels, and she's being very honest about it and open. So that was honestly the best part about it, is that it was unlike any other roundtable I had been a part of. It
Hmm.
wasn't really like a let's take turns asking questions thing. We all just sat and talked
It's
for like 40 minutes.
conversational more than instead of turn by turn combat. It was just free
Yeah,
for all.
yeah, yeah.
Which I think is it's really funny because and this is gonna be like the dualities of like dualities with the show, dualities with the characters, and now dualities with the roundtables. Because I like Triad was also very privileged to have been invited to a roundtable interview with Leslie, and it's really interesting to hear your experience with that because like mine when I was there with some other amazing podcasters was the opposite. Not to say that it was bad, it was great, and it's always awesome to talk to like all these amazing artists, but it felt very different from yours in the sense that she didn't feel relaxed and everything felt, I don't want to say uh, canned, but it
Th-
definitely felt like either she was exhausted from press, from the whole day of doing interviews, or she did have like talking points that they asked her to hit or not hit. But it definitely felt like a little more pipeline interview in a way that I hadn't really experienced with some other creators that we have talked in the past. So it's refreshing to hear that that's not necessarily her. That maybe it was the circumstance that put her in that position.
well, it's funny. Like Dave Filoni also stopped by. He was there for like a minute or two, and was kind of ribbing Leslie that like, haha, you have to do press, and she was talking about having like we're about to do 3 weeks of press on
Hmm.
this thing, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a lot where you're just constantly talking about the same thing. I mean, Molly and I just got off our 2.5 hour stream about the premiere episodes, and I was talking to her about how like yeah we go on these streams, and after 2 hours it feels like what are we even doing or talking about,
Right,
like
you
you
lose the
just
plot.
so if you're doing that all day, like that's hard.
Yeah, especially when it's with so many different people, right? Because
Yep.
it's not just her talking to like a friend like we are right now, or just like in a stream where it's like you're kind of controlling the conversation to an extent. She's talking to strangers every single minute, and always has to like adjust for that or readjust for that, and like in this feedback loop. So it definitely feels like something that's tough. So I sympathize 100%
And I
with
think
her.
when she's talking to fans as well, I think she wants to give off a good she wants them all to have a good experience. So she's
Mhm.
probably trying to remember names and podcasts and like
Yeah.
uh, just making sure we go through that too. It's like just trying to remember everyone's names just because you don't want to like fumble and mess up and have someone have a bad experience with you. Like it's difficult to do.
Yeah, which I think, and we'll get to that in a minute once we start talking about the show proper. But I think that's the difference too, between a fan doing Star Wars and a non-fan doing Star Wars.
Mm.
There's an attachment and a responsibility that I feel that she weighs on her, is beholden
Yeah.
upon her, like the gravitas of it in a way that it's not to other people. And when I say other people, I directly mean Tony Gilroy. Tony
Mhm.
Gilroy is not a Star Wars fan. He doesn't care. I mean, I don't mean that he doesn't care about making a good story, but he's not. There's the responsibility of Star Wars doesn't weigh on him because he's not a fan, so he can be a lot more loose and liberal with it in a way that Leslie is not. Two very different results, and I think both results are excellent. And I think we'll talk about those dualities because if there's something this show is talking about, is dualities.
I think that's a great point between Leslie and Tony, but I'll we can save that for later when you want to talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Moving a little bit forward with interviews, like you had your Leslie interview, I had my Leslie interview, but then our the paths coalesced, and there was a meeting point, and we were both very extremely lucky to be able to be invited to the Acolyte premiere, and it was one for the books. I have to say, it's one of those things that you never expect to get, and once you're there, it's you can't believe that you're there. And to me, because this was the show that I was expecting the most, I was really hoping that the premiere itself and everything around it was going to live up to that because my frame of reference for all of these is the Andor premiere, and the Andor premiere was such an incredible moment. It's and I can't believe I'm going to phrase it this way. It's the first event that I was able to participate in, and that's where like I met you guys for the first time. I met like a lot of other podcasters, and it was such a great experience. So all of a sudden, be in Star Wars to in a very tangential way in this very surreal environment, and then surrounded by friends that are just enjoying it and having fun with it and just engaging with it in the same way of happiness was a great thing. So I was looking forward to Acolyte being that same experience, and thankfully to me it was like everything that I hoped it was gonna be, especially because there was the after party, and the after party always, I mean, not necessarily always, but it always should include karaoke.
Sure.
How was your? I forgot. I was gonna wear my golden scarf from the premiere, but I totally forgot. So now I just regular black T-shirt as always. But how did that premiere experience live up to your expectations?
It was good. I feel like I was able to take it in a little more because Andor was also our first time being invited to something like that. Didn't really know what to expect, what to do, and it was all very overwhelming. This was still kind of overwhelming, but we at least knew what to expect, how
Hmm.
to get our badges, where to go. Like that all was not something weighing on my mind. So I feel like I was able to enjoy this one a little bit more and just look around and not be worried about it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was super fun. The karaoke after party. I do think I do think the karaoke after party wasn't as good as the Andor premiere.
Absolutely agree.
Only
Absolutely
because
agree.
I think it was more crowded this time, and
Yes.
last time, uh, I sang quite a bit, and this time I only sang once, and that's fine because it was a great experience.
It was once, but I will say it
We
was
really made it count.
we made it count, and it was the closing song. So I feel like we did uh, bring the house down, for lack of a better term. But yeah, it was really good. And I think one of the really cool things about the premiere was not just watching the show with everybody and seeing all the stars that are there to watch the show with us, but also something that we were hoping would happen, which is having all the luminous authors, all the original High Republic authors join the premiere was a really cathartic experience. It's like it's like they're the parents. They did
Yeah.
everything, and here they are to watch their kids go down. Getting graduation and getting that diploma and shaking hands. And it was really funny though because I was hoping the authors would be there, but I didn't know they were going to be there. And then we are at the pool bar, and Nikki and I waiting for everybody. And then when we kind of we're having our drinks, then when we look over, she's like, "Oh shit, everyone's there." It's like Charles and DJO and Zoraida, Tessa, Alyssa, like everybody was there. So it was really great to see them. Obviously, we kind of left them alone because they seemed not sequestered.
Yeah.
They seemed like they wanted to just do their own thing on the corner. But then to see them at the red carpet taking all the group photos, which mirror all the group photos that they were taking at Skywalker Ranch the first time that
Yeah.
they met for Project Luminous, is like one of those surreal moments, like, oh shit, like it started at the page and now it's on the screen. Uh, and then you were cosplaying as Charles Soule, so that
Right.
was
That
also like
nailed
a
that.
great moment. It's
That
like
I was so happy about that. Just that uh, I walked up just because yeah, we were wearing basically the same colors. He was wearing like a full linen suit. I did linen vest and
oh,
pants, but we still
different,
had the
yeah.
golden tie,
Hmm.
white undershirt, and we were like, ah, twinsies. And like he wanted to take a picture with me, and I was like, okay, that just made my day.
You're like, yes, you may, sir.
You
Yes, you
may.
may.
but
It's always good when the shoe is on the other foot. It's like, oh,
It was it was fun, yeah, being at the pool bar first and seeing all them and being like, yeah, they're obviously kind of off enjoying their moment. But then
yes.
once they're in the public space on the carpet, it's like, okay, now I'm gonna go talk to them.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely hilarious to just watch all these guys just geek out the same way we're geeking out. Because I was talking to Soraya, and it was kind of the same. We are having the same conversation. It's like, isn't it crazy to just be here? And it's always funny to see like these people, right? That were they're writing Star Wars books, and they're the people who are building the worlds that we're enjoying, and but they're also fans. And I also see them geek out in the fandom the same way you geek out. It's kind of like, oh, this
It
is
was
cool.
fun. I've probably talked to Daniel Jose Older the most, so like I feel the most comfortable approaching him on stuff. But like right after, uh, I saw him, so we were walking out of the theater, and I was just like doing like, how are we feeling? Like thumbs up, thumbs down. And he was like, there's only one answer, like two big
Hell
thumbs
yeah.
up. He was so happy. So yeah, just seeing them get to enjoy all of that and see their work get translated up onto the big screen. Uh,
And acknowledge
yeah,
because there were more callbacks, but references to the High Republic than I was expecting. Because I part of me thought it would just be kind of lip service and be like, oh,
right.
this is the High Republic, but we're still doing our thing.
Should we run through some of them? Yeah, like the white and gold robes,
The temple robes, which is obvious, then vectors.
vectors. I was so happy to see a vector.
But then for me, the baddest of the bunch was Barrage Vow.
Yeah,
When they said Barrage Vow, I was like, here we
that
go.
is like just an A plus lore inclusion for me because they give you enough context for someone who doesn't know what that is. It's like, yeah, he hasn't spoken in 10 years. Like, okay, he's taken some oath of silence or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know enough to know what it is. But if you really know what it is, you're like,
You're like,
oh
oh
shit,
yeah.
that guy did something he's not proud of and is now like it just adds to the mystery of it all.
It's one of those things where like I don't necessarily want to use the term Easter egg, but it's the type of Easter egg, for lack of a better term, that works on every level because it's
Yep.
story appropriate. If you know type of thing. If you don't need to. But and it's essential to the plot too. So it's one of those things where I think everything has been very well placed in a way that feels organic and not forced. But anyway, but full disclosure for everyone that's listening right now, Alex has been very lucky to watch the first 4 episodes, so they have knowledge about episodes 3 and 4. But we will try to Jedi mind trick it so that Alex forgets 3 and 4, and we only focus on 1 and 2 and just speculate with only that because that's how mind tricks work. Eh,
That's it. I have been all day going off of so the way I did it was I watched episodes 1 and 2 together with Molly, and then we did our reviews for those 2 episodes, then watched 3, then did the review, then watched 4, then
oh,
did the review. So, like, any speculation in our reviews is genuine, and
mm,
I'm just gonna talk about everything as I did then.
excellent.
So, I
That's
can
that's
I can do
that's
that.
that sounds appropriate for like a
That's
better
how
word.
I always do it, like, Bad Batch especially, there's so many episodes that sometimes I'm like, "Here's my speculation," and then I watch the very next episode, and I was like, "Welp, that was wrong," but I keep it in.
Speaking of number of episodes, that's a good point. That's one thing that I'm not happy about the show, that it's only 8 episodes. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of and it's not. I mean, Disney Plus is not the only one that's doing this. I think. House of the Dragon's also gonna be 7 or 8 episodes.
Was it really?
Rings of Power also not gonna be up to 10. I feel like each time seasons are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, which is at that point it's just like just make a movie. If you're just
Right.
it's like
Yeah, it's like these streamers want these series to keep people going week to week, and they want them all to look great. They want them to look movie quality, but it's like w- we had a delineation between movie and television,
yeah,
and it was fine. And yeah, like I remember when Game of Thrones came out, and it was only 10 episodes, and everyone was like, "Oh, a short season." But hey, they're all an hour long. It looks great.
yeah,
Blah blah blah. And now it's like the Mandalorian came out season 1, it was like, "Oh, it's only 8 episodes. Oh, and they're like
30
30 or
minutes.
40 minutes. Okay." It's like,
But I will say that I always feel the same way when I see runtimes for all of these Lucasfilm Disney Plus shows. However, I always, or for the most part, feel that they, for 30, 40 minute episodes, are extremely well, there's no fat in them, they're perfect because they feel longer, to be honest, but in a good way. Not because they're dragging, it just feels like they pack a lot of content in a very limited amount of time, and they feel, for short episodes, they feel complete.
I have the exact same opinion. I remember seeing the first, well, I mean, like, the first episode's 42 minutes or
Yeah.
something, and the second one was 36, so I was like, "Alright, they're not" up in the lead up, they were like, "They're 30-minute episodes," and I'm glad it's not, like, strictly 30 minutes. Anyway, each of the episodes, I've been like, "Man, a lot has happened in this runtime."
Hmm.
And I can't even remember which episode is the shortest one, but I
The
still remember
second one,
being
I think.
like, yeah, I can't. It never seemed like, oh, this is too short. It definitely leaves me wanting more, but like the amount that I have written about all of these
Mhm.
episodes, I'm like, it's kind of ridiculous when you look at the script length to the episode runtime. I'm like, they are jam packed with fun plot stuff, but like really great character stuff to dissect, really great themes. Like I've been having a blast breaking down the episodes.
I mean, and with that, I think that's as good a time as any to start our review. And I think this is going to be a short episode, I guess, because there's fire in space. So I guess that the show
Throw it
sucks.
out.
So
Throw
thanks
it
everybody
out.
for listening to Trial of the Force. This is the end of our Acolyte
That's I wrote a
coverage.
20-minute script about just that.
It's funny, and I don't mean to. I keep pushing off the actual review of the episode, so apology to anybody listening. But I think it's funny, and I think it's important to talk about it. The discourse around all these things, which we always say Star Wars fans are the worst fans in the world. They're not. I mean, we're amazing, but there's this contingent of fans that's just
We're
uh,
amazing.
well, well,
I,
well, this diet. Well, I don't know about the rest, but they're content. It's just like never going to be satisfied and find the most odd and peculiar things to complain about. And at this point, well, not this point, for a while now, I just wonders like, why do you make your person? I always think of Rose Tico in this moment. She's like, why do you fight? That's not how we win. We don't win fighting what you hate. You win saving what you love. And like I don't understand why some of these so-called fans just hate watch and just dedicate their personalities to negativity and toxicity. And I'm not saying that some people are just like, oh, people are allowed to not like things. And I totally agree. Yeah, I think that you can not enjoy something. You can not like the acolyte, but I feel you kind of have to do it from a position of good faith, because if you're just like talking in platitudes and things that aren't very specific to why the show doesn't work for you, then you're really not engaging with the show, honestly. But I don't know. That being said, however, I feel though, and this is as someone that doesn't really spend time on Twitter anymore because I'm more on Threads these days. Uh, Surprisingly, my social media experience uh, today has been wonderful.
oh man, Twitter was great last night after the premiere. So I was I went out, since I had seen the episode multiple times, I was like, I'm gonna take a little bit of. Usually, I play D&D with my friends on
Mm,
Tuesday nights, unless I have to do Star Wars work.
work.
And so
Mm.
I'm like, hey, I've seen the episode. I'm gonna play D&D with my friends. Then I will come home and I'll edit my review and I'll go to bed. And I came home and I spent like way too long joy scrolling on Twitter, which I cannot say
Joy
I've done.
scrolling is a term I've never heard
Exactly. It's like it
of.
does not happen often. I was having a great time just looking at everyone's reaction. Uh, so that ate up a lot of time, and then I went to bed way too late because I was having a good time on Twitter for once.
That's a first. I've never heard of someone
Mhm.
going to bed late because they were joy scrolling.
Right.
Usually it's the other way around. So that's good to hear that people have been. I mean, and it makes sense, right? Because I feel the High Republic community has always been like a happy part of
Yeah.
the Star Wars fandom and very accepting and joyful. So to see them kind of enjoy the moment of finally having the High Republic jump onto the big screen and then seeing normies that don't know what the hell the High Republic is being like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's refreshing in a way that I haven't felt the Star Wars since the prequels came out, basically, because
Mm.
everything that has come out from Star Wars post prequels is just things we know, right? It's the sequel trilogy, which as much as I love a lot of some of those movies, it's original trilogy tropes. Andor is original trilogy based. Rogue One, obviously, it's so like everything's great. Don't get me wrong, but it comes from the familiar. So while I'm happy to always have new Star Wars, it's new Star Wars is always same Star Wars to varying degrees. But for me, Acolyte has been like the first time it's like, oh, new. This is
Mhm.
I don't know anything.
And
All right.
every time I keep saying like it's the first live action project set outside of the Skywalker saga, and every time I do that, someone says like, well, "What about Andor and Rogue One?" I'm like, "That's in the Skywalker saga. It's not like episode whatever." But I'm talking about the timeline.
The Death Star is in Andor. It's like it's literally
Yeah.
literally connected to it. But tell me a little bit of your experience watching the Acolyte because I know you're a big fan of High Republic books, as I am. Uh, Although you've read far more than I, because I don't read all of it. But I read mostly just the YA and adult novels, so I feel like I got a good grasp. But you, as someone who's so in depth into High Republic lore, what was your excitement level for the show, and what was your expectation for the show based on your High Republic fandom?
I don't think I had that many expectations. I did have a lot of hype for the show because yeah, I love the High Republic, but also it was more just yeah, something new outside of the Skywalker saga, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I do think that the first time I watched the first two episodes, it did take some adjusting because you always go into something with even though I say I don't have expectations, you still kind of
Hmm.
do. You just don't know what you're getting. And
Right, right, right.
so and the same thing happened to me with Andor. Like I remember walking out of the Andor premiere being like it was good. Like it was definitely good, but I don't know if I liked it as a Star Wars show or what. And then by the freaking prison episodes, I was like, this is the best shit I've ever seen.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
like I'm feeling very similar with the Acolyte as I did to Andor, where I'm like, okay, I think I get it. It really wasn't until the second episode and that scene with Torben that I was like,
Hmm. No, we'll get to Torben.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, like, then it started to click with me, and I'm not gonna talk about, like, the future episodes, but, like, each episode, the way that Leslie talked about it as an onion,
Hmm.
you learn something new, and you're like, "Oh," and, like, it
It's like
keeps
an ogre. Yes.
yeah, 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 or a parfait, and
Exactly.
you keep going back to what you already know, and you're like, "Oh, wait, hold on." So, like, everything that's being told is essential, but we're in the establishing phase with the first two episodes, and also there's an element of, like, I look at the trailers way too much,
Mm-hmm,
and
hmm.
Fortunately, they got through most of that stuff with the first 2 episodes where I was like, "I kinda think I know how this is gonna go." And
Right.
the first 2 episodes, I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." But beyond that, it's not quite that.
But I like your comparison with Andor because yesterday I was talking to Nani about this, and it's very interesting the comparison with Andor because to an extent they're kind of the opposite sides of the same coin, right? They're
Mm.
both Star Wars show, but done from completely different directions. Because where Andor was done by Tony Gilroy, doesn't give a flying fuck about Star Wars, and I mean that in the like I'm not a fan, so I'm not beholden to lore, but obviously I want to do a good show kind of way. So he just comes in and just does his thing that just happens to be a Star Wars. Uh, and then Leslie comes in as a Star Wars fan and be like, "What Star Wars show would I want to watch as a fan?" So they're both coming from opposite directions to give something fresh and new, with the difference of perspectives. Like I want to do something fresh as a fan, and then Tony's like, "I want to do something fresh, not being a fan." So in a way,
Mhm.
they are the May and Osha, right? But in real life, because they're both creating Star Wars shows, just light and dark, and I mean, I don't mean to be binary about it, but that's how like these dualities are being presented in the show. So I think it's interesting to see the same thing kind of parallel itself with both of these shows because a lot of people, I think, rightfully are comparing them because they are the boldest shows to come from Lucasfilm. Uh, so it's just interesting to see that. I just hope that as the acolyte progresses, it keeps proving that true, and that just keeps improving as it keeps moving forward. Because I think these first two episodes for me were just a home run because it was just everything that I wanted to see. Torben notwithstanding, and just like fast forwarding to the second episode, but I have to say it now before I forget. Torben must be an ascendant of Chris Madine. They both have
Sure, yeah.
fake, terrible beards.
What?
Uh, uh, that was baffling. It's one of those things that took me out of the moment, but not in a terrible way because we're used to bad fake beards in Star Wars. But I was just like, "What's up with this boy? What this Benjamin Button motherfucker here?" And just like, what?
What's up with this boy?
Like,
Yeah, it's like,
what happened?
obviously, this character is gonna be important in flashback. Like, we've seen flashbacks in the
Yeah,
trailers.
we know
They
that
they are
Telnaka did the thing. It's
they
like,
are building up some shit that happened back then, and that, like, to me, that is the central mystery, is, like, what is going on?
mhm,
So, Torben, I think they wanted to cast a Padawan for that role, and then, we only need him for 2 other scenes, and then he's dead, so
put a
let's
beard on him.
just yep, alright.
It's one of those. I don't want to nitpick, but this one's fun. This one's fun to nitpick because it's one of those things where I'm just like, you could have gone two ways. You could have gone the Mrs. Doubtfire route and just done amazing aging makeup that just makes you look older, or you could have just
Crix
recast it.
Medine.
Or, well, that's the
That's a
wild card
3rd way.
option. That's the wild card
Yeah.
option. Or they could just like just cast his dad or something. I don't know. Doesn't he have a grandpa or something you can cast? Uh, Oh, whatever. It's neither here nor there. It's a funny little tidbit on the show, which adds to a lot of the fun things of the show because I feel that the comedy in the show is also very good because it feels in place in a way that sometimes I felt there was comedy in the sequel trilogy that felt out of place for me. But
Mhm.
that's just a personal preference thing. But uh, yeah, excellent, except for the fake beard. But we still love Torben. Uh, what did that boy do to want to kill
What did
himself?
you do,
What
Torben?
did you do?
Did something.
That's terrible, horrible things. And I think that's the really cool thing, though, of Acolyte right now because I'm watching the show with my partner, and she is a normie. She's just casual Star Wars fan, so it's fun to be watching it with her to see how she's engaging with the show from an outside perspective. And I think that in that sense, the show is being very successful because she's in it. She's like, the
Mm.
Jedi must have done something like going into deep of the psychology of everything based on everything that's been introduced so far with Osha and May, and then the guilt of everyone. Obviously, the unaliving of Torben. Spoiler alert. it sets up a lot of nuance for what the Jedi did that I think is really interesting. So we could spend so much time dissecting each itty bitty part of both episodes, but let's just talk globally about both because they premiere both at the same time. So let's just talk about both of them as a movie. How did you receive both of them, and like, what's your reaction to the mystery setup? Because some people have been speculating or saying that it's a murder mystery, but it really is not. It's a mystery for sure, but not about the murder. It's more about
Right.
the reasons for these murders. So like, what's your review, I guess, in that regard of how the show is setting up its plot?
The way that I've been describing it in some of my videos is like, "Oh, this is not a who done it, it's a why done
A
it.
why done it?
We know who done it, so why done do it,
Do
May?"
we? Do we though? Do we?
Well, I mean, we know that May killed Indara. We know that
But
May.
what? Maybe that was OSHA.
Alright. I mean, it'll
Ah,
be a wild twist. Like, I wanna be so against that so that if it's true, I'll go, "Holy shit." Like, I don't even wanna entertain that thought. I'm like, "May did it. We saw her do it, and then she killed Torben." So, but yeah, like, I am super into that. This I was a little iffy on the show. I hadn't latched on to anything until Torben was offered the poison, and he
hmm
woke up, and he settled down, and he's like, "Please forgive me. We thought we were doing the right thing,
hmm
and I don't wanna tell the truth or confess to what happened." So, gulp. I was like, What?" So, I'm really happy that they've established this as the mystery.
hmm
Like, that to me is what the whole show hinges on now, is
hmm
that if they can make that big enough, complex enough, because like, I don't think the Jedi went in and killed everyone.
Oh, that's my theory.
Well,
We'll get to
maybe,
that,
maybe.
but
Like, I definitely don't think May started the fire
no,
or
absolutely
whatever.
not. Yeah,
Like, the
she's
way
the
that they say
scapegoat.
that, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So, something happened, but I don't think that it's like the Jedi showed up and said, "We're gonna do something real evil
Oh
today."
no. Yeah.
I feel like they were put in a difficult situation and dealt with it poorly, and then
Yep.
decided to hide it, which they didn't have to do, but they did, and now like they don't want the truth to come out. That's my
As
hope.
as
Is
as Luke Skywalker said in the Last Jedi, they were left with truth and consequence,
hmm
and now they're dealing with that. Which I think is the. I think that's it. I, they all the scenes that we've seen in the trailer of the witches, and I forgot what the mother's name is. Um, Obviously the past, and that's the confrontation, and then we see the snippets in the trailer of Torben, baby Torben, before the bad beard and the bad bald cap fighting with Kalnaka, and it's some and I think Soul was the instigator of why everything went down the way it did, because of how they're being framed and how apologetic he is, and how much of a nice guy. He's overcompensating
yeah.
in that regard. So that's why I think it's gonna be a bait and switch about that, where like sweet old Qui Gon esque Soul is actually
hmm
kind of be like, oh, maybe he just was just a jerk, and he's kind of trying to pretend that he isn't when he's actually not that great. I'm not saying gonna go as far to say that he's the acolyte, but instigator in many regards.
I think he's probably a good dude. I think for most of his life, he's probably made good Jedi decisions, and he probably fucked
I
up.
hope so.
He probably messed up back on Brindok and tried to hide it, and now he's probably gonna. uh, I think we're gonna see him try to continue to hide it, whatever it is. But yeah, I agree. I don't trust Soul, and there's like Lee Jung Jae is doing a
Ah,
great job.
amazing. Yep, yep.
There's a very cool moment when he mentions like OSHA had a twin, and Yord's like, "I didn't know that." Yord, I grew up with OSHA, didn't
Mm,
know she had a twin, and like it wasn't in the records. And he is like holding a cup and just kind of pauses before he takes a sip, like a small little thing. But
yeah. It's like,
yeah,
which is a
I
thing.
think
Which is a
he's
thing
hiding
that's
something.
it's a thing that's set up in like all the High Republic books. Yoda, that little sneaky green little friend, is just hiding everything. It's like, oh, and the phase 2, let's hide stuff about the nameless. It's just no, no, no. It's Jedi. You need to fess up to everything that's going on. I think that that's the thing that is haunting them and leads to their downfalls. Being like, oh, because we know better, quote unquote, and because we have to be be better. It's like it's the lesson that I keep tying it to Last Jedi. The lesson that Yoda taught Luke there. She's like, yeah, you have to pass on your failure as well. And
Hmm.
at this point, the Jedi aren't ready to accept that they can fail, and then they have to learn from that failure instead of just trying to hide it. And I
Well,
think that's the
so
really good thing of the show right now.
so much of their fear comes from like their reputation, and Yoda wants to hide the nameless and what they can do because he doesn't want their enemies to find out.
Mhm,
And then we have in this episode Vernestra being like, we can't let our political enemies know that a former Jedi might be killing Jedi. Like
mhm,
we gotta hide that. And I think Soul is gonna be Soul and Indara and Kelnaka and Torben probably did something that they're like, we can't have people finding out that the Jedi did this, so we have to hide it. Instead
mhm,
of just owning up to whatever your issues are, whatever you did, admitting your mistake, they're like, hide it, hide it, hide it, hide the worst versions of ourselves.
mhm,
Yeah. And like that's kind of also what Luke is grappling with in The Last Jedi. He's Luke Skywalker, the legend,
mhm,
and he has to be infallible now. And I think the Jedi Order feels that weight of like, we can't let anyone know that we aren't perfect all the time.
yeah. And speaking of Ernestus, you brought her up, and I think it's a good moment to talk about her. Like we mentioned, High Republic bringing a bunch of cool things from the book to life, and one of the really cool things has been seeing Vernestra jump from the page to the screen. And now we get our other green friend in live action, and that's the trailers confirmed. This is not a spoiler anymore. We will get to see the purple light whip. However, this moment of the High Republic is in a different, time from the phase 1 and 2 and 3 that we're familiar with. So Bernistra's a little older than she is in phase 3. So because it's been a couple dozen years, she's characterized maybe a little different from what we have been used to seeing in the books. So two questions for you. One, how do you like Vernestra so far? And then two, do you feel that the High Republic book community is gonna, be vitriolic or confused with her characterization in this show versus what has been seen in the books thus far?
I don't think the High Republic fandom is going to go that direction. They're pretty
Good,
chill.
good.
But I mean, I was bummed to see the way that Vernestra was acting. Uh, just I'm used to seeing her as a 16, 17-year old prodigy, and now she's like really hooked into the institution of it all. And yeah, there are things in the books and comics that I'm like, I guess I can see how that would point to her story continuing, but yeah, we don't know how her arc is going to end in the books and comics. And then there's another 100 years after that before we get to this
Mhm.
point. So plenty of stuff can happen to her that would shape her to be this way. And I mean, maybe that's just the longer you live like Yoda, you just get so ingrained into that institution that
It's the boiling frog analogy, right?
yeah,
When you're in the water and the temperature is slowly being slowly rises, you don't know that you're in boiling water. So maybe
till it's too
she's
late.
she's she's so. And do you think she's gonna make it out of this season?
I don't really know how to speculate on that one way or the other. I mean, yeah, we know that she's gonna bring the light whip out, so she's probably gonna get into a fight.
Do you think that's a
Um,
flashback though, or do you think that's
hmm,
in the present time?
I don't know. I assumed it was in the present day, but
Because she
it
has
could have
her
been a
mission
flashback.
robes in the clip, I think, right?
Yeah, I just assumed she was gonna go out, go out and fight, but maybe not.
I mean, I hope so. No, I mean, we need to see a prolonged light whip battle. It can't just be like can't just be an Indiana Jones
Just a
moment.
little show off.
Yeah, it can't now. Has to be as good, better, I guess, than Kingsman: The Golden Circle when Pedro Pascal has his,
Uh-huh.
electrified whip. We need that times 10,000. So yeah, Vernestra also very cool, but then we have to talk about legacy characters, and I know this has been, Leslie has denied it. She's denied that Yoda is in the show, but I think that's a red herring to put us off the trail because Vernestra already talked to Saul about coming back to Coruscant and talking to the council. So I have my theories about at least one boy that I want to see, and that's my glove shido. That's my boy Gerald Poof. He has to be there, bobbing his head. But Sassy Tin also just vibing. But Yoda, come on, he has to. He has to. Like at least in a hologram or something. What do you think? You think Leslie's trying to, throw us off the trail?
I think she's probably trying to prepare people that Yoda's not in it and don't get your hopes up.
what I have said is that I think the cool bait and switch might be just the setup. You're in the council chambers and the camera's
Oh, and
behind,
Yoda's not there at
and
all,
then
and
no,
it's
no,
all
and
it's
then
all
like
Yarl Poof.
and then it just pans and you see like a little green ear and you're like, oh, that's Yoda, and then it just pans around and it's Yaddle, and then people are just
Yeah.
like, God damn it, who is this ginger green little person? And then
A
but
lady Yoda.
oh, late, that's so
Oh, so
woke.
woke.
It's like that's first fire in space, and now women Yodas, uh, voiced by the great Bryce Dallas Howard. I think that's the way to go if you're gonna bait and switch. Not having Yoda, it's just bring
That
in
would be kind
Bryce
of funny.
to
Yeah.
a little Yaddle. Maybe why would Yoda not be there though? He's off with buckets of blood, baking something with younglings,
We can only hope.
or good relations with the Wookiee he has. So maybe he's in Kashyyyk doing something. But we need puppet Yoda. Come on. May and Osha, though, they are the protagonists of the show, and I feel sometimes people in the as if we've been talking about this show forever. In the past 24 hours, people I feel have been talking about the things that you and I have been talking about: Vernestra, Yoda, Soul. What did the Jedi do? Vectors, all these things. But I feel like a lot of the things that have been lost in the noise a little bit is May and Osha, and I feel that maybe because the quote unquote reveal of them being twins was kind of not swept under the rug, but revealed quickly, and people knew it from the trailers. I feel that people have not talked about them as the protagonists of the show as much as they probably should be talking about them. So why don't we rectify that a little bit? These two first episodes have dual titles. The first one's called Lost Found, and the second one's called Revenge and Justice, right? It's a duality of similar concepts, which the twins are manifesting in many different ways. And
Hmm.
obviously, the duality of Luke and Leia is there to like contrast how Star Wars always deals with these binaries. So I think it's really like I like the episodes, but once I saw the titles of them, I'm just like, it elevated them a little bit more for me. So, Alex, what did you think of Osha and May? And Amandla has been obviously portraying both characters, and I think she's done a really good job of giving them their own flavor, so that they definitely
Hmm.
feel like different characters portrayed by different people. Very much better than Lindsay Lohan did in The Parent Trap. Let's be honest. No disrespect to Lindsay Lohan, but come on.
Sounds like you're disrespecting Lindsay Lohan.
Well, sorry, I guess. Another Disney property. It's fine. But yeah, how did you feel about Osha and May and their journey so far?
I really like May. I like her more than OSHA right now, just because OSHA's like, yeah, I mean,
The dark
OSHA
side
is
has
the
cookies. Yeah.
protagonist, but May. the way that Amanda is playing May is not what I expected.
Mhm,
Like, immediately, she feels out of her depth. She can hold her own in a fight, but she can't win without cheating. She
mhm,
looks genuinely hurt and a little scared. Like,
mhm,
everything she's doing with May, I like a lot, and I kinda wish May were in it a little bit more, which I'm sure she will be as May and Osha get closer together. But I think there are mysteries surrounding the twins
mhm, mhm,
that people haven't really talked about much, and I'm focused on why does Osha keep seeing young May?
mhm, mhm,
And I figured at first that May was probably doing that and trying to communicate to her sister, but then we find out that May didn't even know Osha was alive in episode 2. So I'm like, is this just a Snoke, Kylo Ren, Ray thing where someone else is bridging their minds, or
mhm,
is it
mhm.
just a twin connection, or what? Like, what's going on there? That's what is captivating me about the twins.
I think it's interesting because the more I think about it, the more threads I'm starting to, either imaginary threads or real threads, I'm starting to find that I want to keep pulling at. And once you mentioned that, I think the interesting thing to me was similar to what you said. Like, I started thinking, like, what if it's, I don't think it's necessarily going to be one to one this, but what if it's a Fight Club situation, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
it's not that they're just one person. I don't think that's the case. They're definitely two people. We know that. But they're, the Force and dyads and twins. There might be a thing where they're more connected than we appear, and clearly that has been set up by the poem, which, like, for the love of me, can't remember, but the poem very much establishes their oneness.
Always
Like,
one, but born is two. That's
yeah,
the line
yeah,
I wrote
yeah.
down. Yeah.
It's so good. But I think it's interesting what you just said, right? That she all of a sudden, like, starts seeing May, and now when we're talking about this, I'm wondering, is she only seeing it now because she has been repressing, like, visions of May all this time, and now it's kind
Mm.
of like, now that May has begun her dark side journey by murdering the Jedi, bam, now is when Osha is kind of unlocking her connection with her that she wasn't realizing that she had. Because I do think that there's a lot more to Osha that meets the eye, because one of the things that Leslie had been talking about this show was that it was about the bad guys. The show isn't about the Jedi; it's about the antagonist. And it's like, well, how about the underdog and all these things? So it's, for me, it's interesting, at least at this point in the game, only 2 episodes in, to see that she's talking about the show being about the underdog, but we're but so far it's just like, oh no, it's a Soul and Osha. So that's why I'm just like, oh, is this a bait and switch? Like, we think Osha is the good guy protagonist, but based on what Leslie's saying, if the show is about the villain, then maybe Osha is kind of a secret villain with May, and she just doesn't know it yet.
Even if she's not right now, I think they very clearly established Yord and Jackie and Osha as having like this really strong connection with either the Jedi or Soul specifically.
Mhm,
Yord obviously is the like I'm a Jedi all the way and we know best and I'll follow all the rules. Jackie and Osha both have like a really great relationship with Soul. And I think that if we learn more about what happened on Brindock and
mhm,
they learn more information, then they might not like him so much. And
mhm.
so it could push Osha into darkness.
You mentioned Jord, and I wanted to take a moment to say that I saw that the Swagman on Twitter started using the Jord Horde hashtag, and I've seen lots of people being in the Jord fandom. But I have to say, you were first.
I know. I feel so vindicated. I was telling Molly that earlier. Like that was part of the reason I was up too late on Twitter is seeing Yord Horde go up, and I was like, I knew it. I've been saying it. Yord's the best character in this show. Like, only knowing that he's a stickler for the rules. I was like, you're my favorite. You're my favorite Yord. I knew I would relate to him. And like, to be clear, I think he's a dick, but like, he is so fun to watch, and that's exactly what I wanted from him to be like. Every word out of his mouth, I'm like, ugh. So, like,
Well,
I'm having a blast watching Yord.
you were first though. You were first, and I have to acknowledge it here. Trial the Force said it first. Alex Damon was the first member of the Horde. Everyone else is
I'll
just
accept that I was
following.
an early
Early
member.
adopter.
Yeah.
Hey, your fan club number 001. You got it. And if not, I'll make you a card. But I mean, you were a Yord fan. I was a Jackie fan. Like I think that Daphne Keen's character is just amazing and a good foil for him as well. But I think an interesting character also that has popped up. I mean, not popped up. We knew he was there. Is I always forget his goddamn name. Kimry. Kimry.
Kamir?
Kimir. Thank
Yeah.
you. I felt like uh, bad mispronouncing it. Kimir, which we thought was gonna be like the bumbling, not bumbling idiot necessarily, but the a glorified glove shitter almost. But now people are just like elevating to acolyte level.
Mhm.
How do you feel about? I mean, his character has been great, but do you feel that the theories are correct? And I want you to forget episodes 3 and 4 just in case. But do you think the theories are correct about Kamir and his potential to being the secret Sith or the acolyte or the master or the apprentice or whoever is wielding the red lightsaber?
From the trailers, I was one of the people that I was like, "The hell did you just say?" When he said "peace is a lie" in the trailer. So, he was immediately my, like, suspect number 1. And I really like the way they did it in episode 2, where he
Mhm.
says he delivers that line, but then May cuts him off and she's like, "Peace is a lie. I know." So, to me, that seems like he is, yes, pretending to be this kind of bumbling assistant that May has for whatever reason, but he's also like giving her speeches and trying to educate her in the ways of the Sith, maybe without her fully knowing it. Yeah, like I'm fully on board with Chimere being the secret Sith in the helmet. And if that's true, I hope it's also like the twins, where it's
Mhm.
like, let's get to that fast,
Right.
or they're gonna drag it out, and he will be an amazing red herring.
Because I think that's the interesting thing. I think there's a people are mixing terms, and maybe they are meant to be mixed, right? But people are saying the acolyte is necessarily one of the Sith, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case because acolyte. And I just looked up the definition just to make sure that I'm saying what it is appropriately. But an acolyte is a person assisting the celebrant in a religious service or procession, an assistant or follower. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the acolyte is the master or the apprentice. It just means that they might just be
Right.
serving them.
Oh
So
yeah.
that might be
So
the bait and switch here.
the the way I'm understanding acolyte comes from Leslie's chat with Dave Filoni that they
Mhm,
released on. It was like a 2-minute clip, but she was talking about Asajj Ventress as kind of an acolyte
mhm, mhm,
of
mhm.
Count Dooku's,
Yes.
where she wasn't quite a Sith apprentice because Dooku was the Sith apprentice.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
she's like the acolyte. And it's kind of the Sith apprentice trying to find someone
The
that can
apprentice
help.
once removed.
Right, yeah. The apprentice trying to find someone to help him or her kill the master.
Hmm.
So that's what I think May is. I think May is the acolyte, at least right now, and that her master is like she's probably a potential Sith apprentice.
Mm.
And maybe Chimera is too, but I kind of get the feeling, especially that scene with OSHA where she goes
Mhm. Oh,
into the
yeah, yeah.
pharmacy.
And he's like, you look just like her," something like that,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that delivery. There's that, and then at the end of the episode, like, he shows that he has some combat skills,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
there's,
mhm.
like, a really small moment where I feel like he realizes he's pushing a little too hard, like, literally and metaphorically, but, like, he has a knife at May's throat, and he, like, kinda pulls
Reels it
back.
in, yeah.
Uh-huh, and I'm like, "Mm, oh, and you just happen to know where Kelnaka is. Hmm."
Okay, I vibe. The only thing that I kinda have against the theory is that if it's true, it seems too easy, right? Because like, you don't wanna just, like, figure the thing out immediately.
Well,
Eh,
I agree with you, and that's why I'm like, I hope it gets resolved quickly, because if it is true and it's that is solved, and then we'll be like, "W what comes next?" Like, we
right.
still have 5 episodes
Well,
if it happens.
isn't it obvious? The master is either Plagueis or Snoke. That's it.
Yeah, we gotta well, where's Snoke then?
Or Mephisto, right? It's one of those 3.
Yeah.
It's, there's no other options who it could possibly be. But, so I guess with that, right, we could go in depth with these episodes because as we've said, there's a lot to, uh, as analyze and dissect, but we don't have time for that. But before we wrap up, again, ignoring episodes 3 and 4, what are your hopes and dreams and speculations for Acolyte moving forward after these first 2 episodes?
The only hope I have right now is that the mystery that's been established has a satisfying answer. And it's all about like the Jedi and what they did in the past. Why would Torben be willing to kill himself instead of confess the truth, confess his crimes? And he says, "We thought we were doing the right thing." So I do think it's going to be a complex answer. That's all I think the whole show is hinging on that. So as
Yeah.
long as they nail that, and then the rest of the time is filled with like fun Jedi and martial arts action, and like the fallout of that, all the characters have been set up well that
Mhm.
they're ready. Especially Yord is just ready for like a plummeting fall, like break his world apart. I want to see it.
But you mean psychologically,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah,
physically?
yeah, yeah. No, psychologically, he'll be like, what? The Jedi aren't perfect? What?" Like that I look forward to seeing that.
Do you think though that we know that Carrie Ann Moss's character, that Master Indara, has didn't make it out alive, which what my first theory came true. So I'm patting myself on the back for that one. But do you think that we're gonna see more? We will see more casualties. But do you think this is gonna be a Rogue One situation where
Hmm.
everyone bites the dust, or do you think we're gonna see people make it out?
I'm gonna go with no. I think people are gonna make it out because it's more interesting to me story wise that the Jedi do encounter a Sith Lord
And
and they
cover it up
find
again.
a yeah, and they find a way to not even if they rationalize it and they say no, that was just a Knight of Ren or that was just
Mm,
something else, but like they have a chance to figure things out and they decide not to, or they say like, oh well, we maybe they do kill the Sith apprentice and they're like, haha, job
we're
well
done.
done.
Right.
It's a good thing there's only one of these at a time. Like
Right. Right. Right.
maybe they'll learn about the rule of two in season two. I don't know.
And that could be cool because then it could give a little more weight to that moment in a Phantom Menace when Mundi says like this it has been extended for a millennia, and then Yoda and Mace kind of like look at each other. It could be like a oh that's why let's retcon that look and be because they know because Yoda's a sneaky guy and he has the
Mhm.
secret Jedi archives, the super secret archives of secrets.
That only he can fit in.
Right.
He and Yaddle can crawl inside.
It's the Hollow Book of Secrets for the Jedi. Uh, but no, I agree. I think that's gonna be the most important thing about the show is like having a compelling twist for everything to be like, make us go, damn, that
Mhm.
was a shocker. Because as opposed to Andor, where I think the beauty of that show was building on top of like all this social and political commentary, I don't think that Acolyte is necessarily that type of show. Even though I'm sure definitely will say things about diversity and all these things that we support very much here. But I think it's more story driven about plot in a way that Andor was not. Uh, and I mean that very loosely. So it definitely hinges on those reveals in a way that is very important for the show. I think. Uh, as a High Republic fan, we've talked about Vectors, we've talked about Vernestra, we've talked about the Temple Robes, talking about all these things. There's obviously a plethora of other things that we haven't seen, and particularly, I was watching the a screening with Laura Kelly the other day, and she was talking to me about the crawl at the beginning and how
I
it
thought
says,
this was where you were going to ask.
and she was just like, no wars? Then what the hell have I been reading for the last couple of years? Which I found as a hilarious response. But do you think and I think it's appropriate actually for the crawl to not mention the Nile. So I think that's too much info dump for a normie. Be like, 15 paragraphs is
Uh
like,
huh.
well, and there's a Starlight Beacon, and then there's an
There,
island,
after
there's people like this.
centuries of
It's like,
peace,
and
except for
Stella,
this one time where.
exactly. This one time where Stella and Geos had sexual tension with Elzar and Avar, and it was a tryst. And, too much for the normies. So I feel like the crawl did exactly what it needed to do for for our parents, basically. But what from the High Republic books do you feel the show should, or you would prefer it shows either a name drop or a mention of Starlight Beacon? Is there anything that you feel like the show is just like, yeah, it would be better served if this term or this person or this event is casually mentioned, kind of like Barrage Vow, the
Mhm.
Barrage Vow.
Well, first, I actually talked about this with Laura, so I'll share my answer that I don't think the conflict with the Nile is considered a galactic war.
It's a
It takes
skirmish.
place, yeah, well, it takes place in like a corner of the Outer
Yeah.
Rim while the Republic is expanding, and even in the book Midnight Horizon, we see that people in the core don't really care about it. They don't
Mm,
seemed it's over there. It's an outer rim problem. So I think that obviously it's a problem for the Jedi. The
mhm.
Jedi are taking this problem seriously because lives are in danger. So while it was a big important conflict, it doesn't count on the sense of
Right.
like the Clone Wars, which was
Right.
the whole galaxy fighting. So that's how I get around that little bit of the crawl. Um, I don't really know that there's anything that I feel like needs to be name dropped. I would love to hear reference to Starlight Beacon or the Nile or anything.
Mhm.
Like if Ernestra says like, "Oh, I haven't been this tense since." I hope they write it better than that, but
Oh, that one time Starlight Beacon blew up, I was really
yeah,
nervous.
yeah. Ooh, that was scary.
Ooh.
It's ever since my master died, and then she gets 1,000 yard stared. Uh,
Yeah.
so I would love a mention of any of that stuff, but I'm
There's a
like,
hologram in the background of Starlight Beacon just blowing up.
mm, the the aesthetics alone, I'm like, we're good. It feels like it's part of the High Republic. Thematically, I can make those links and see how it is at the tail end of the High Republic.
Mhm.
So, like, I'm good. Whatever they throw at me, I'll be happy with it.
Great. I do think that, uh, n maybe I think something okay, this is super left field, but I think it would be kinda cool if we see the Bacta tank that Dagon is in from Fallen Orders, just like in the
Hmm.
background, he's just floating down there.
We just go
Kinda
to Kobo.
yeah, yeah. Just for a minute, whatever, kind of like that scene in Obi Wan Kenobi when they're in Fortress Inquisitoris. Then we just see Sinube just like floating in the amber. Just show us someone floating somewhere from the books. But no, yeah, I agree. I mean, the show I think has done like a really good balance of giving the High Republic fans what they need to feel like this is a show set in the era that they've invested all these years on and all the hours reading all these books, but also familiar enough for the normies to be like, this is familiar, but it's also fresh. Uh,
Hmm.
so I'm very excited. Living in Acolyte Nation, I got my passport, and I'm ready to spend a couple weeks living here because it's a really, really good time to be a Star Wars fan. But we could be talking about this forever, and we will be talking about it for the next couple of weeks. But for now, this is, I think, a good moment to wrap up the premiere episodes, Lost and Found and Revenge and Justice. But before we wrap up, Alex, I know that there's always stuff going on with you and Molly over at Star Wars Explained. So why don't you tell everybody what you guys have going on? What are your plans for the Acolyte, and what we can expect from your channel?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Acolyte for the next 7 weeks. We will be reviewing the episodes on every Wednesday. Molly is editing our reactions to put out. We'll be doing for our Patreon. We're doing our live stream after show Wednesday evening, and Goose is going to be our
Who?
guest.
Oh,
Goose
this guy.
on
This
episode
guy.
7, which is on
The
July
Force
10th.
Awake. We're going to be talking about The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Yes.
July 10th, you'll be on for the penultimate episode. But yeah, reviews, and then if anything needs explaining, like the Barash vow, I'll be doing videos in between episodes as well.
Excellent. And we'll, as always, leave links down in the description below so everyone can find you easily. But as I said at the beginning, thank you so much for joining us, Alex. It's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. It's always a pleasure to see you in person. And it's looking forward to meeting in the future, maybe Dragon Con, maybe Tokyo, maybe sooner, who knows? But yeah, if not then, at least for episode 7 of The Acolyte. But that is all the time that we have for today. We have been Triad of the Force. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our first reaction slash review episode of The Acolyte with other goodies thrown in for good measure. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment, leave a review on Apple Podcast. Just help boost the algorithm, do the things that allegedly help. But without further ado, thank you so much. Usually we say, may the force be with you, but from now on, it'll be for light and life. Thanks, everybody.